the murder of Takeoff, the guy who was accused of killing Takeoff, his name is Patrick Clark. He actually has a set trial date of November 2026. So this November, it's been deemed that what county is it? Clark County? No, it's Harris County. Harris County, Texas. They're going to be having a trial to see if Patrick Clark is going to be liable for the murder of Takeoff.
The update dropped fast and without warning. Nearly 4 years after Takeoff was killed outside a Houston bowling alley, a judge officially locked in a November trial date for Patrick Xavier Clark. Court documents confirmed the schedule on February 11, 2026, and within hours, major outlets were running the headline. For the first time since the arrest, there's now a clear timeline for when this case will finally move in front of a jury. The announcement didn't come with fanfare, but inside the courtroom, it marked a turning point that investigators, attorneys, and Takeoff's family have been waiting on for years, and that's when the situation took a decisive turn.
A trial date has been set for the man accused of killing Migos rapper Takeoff. That trial now scheduled for November 5th. Here are the court documents showing it, and I confirmed it with his attorney this morning, saying that trial has been scheduled.
According to court records filed in Harris County, the judge approved a trial window in November after months of back-and-forth scheduling between prosecutors and the defense. Both sides had been preparing motions and evidence while the case moved through pre-trial hearings. When the date was confirmed, attorneys immediately shifted from preparation to countdown mode. This isn't just another hearing on the calendar. It's the moment when opening statements are expected to begin, and jurors will start hearing the details that have stayed mostly inside legal filings until now. Nobody expected the confirmation to arrive this quietly.
Oh yeah, we finally got some update on a case that happened when the trial starts in November. It'll be 4 years. Now, rest in peace to Takeoff. My condolences to his family, man. Shout out to the Migos, shout out to Takeoff family and everything. This trial, Patrick Clark is going to end up walking out that court. He's going to get found not guilty. Because I've been explaining about this, man. It was too many shots fired in that little private party at the bowling alley. And when we get to the lady that said, yeah, everybody that had weapons on them that night, they was all on Jazz and Jay Prince's team.
The charge at the center of the case is murder, tied to the early morning shooting on November 1st, 2022. Investigators said the incident followed an argument that escalated outside the bowling alley, and surveillance footage became a major part of the evidence collected. Clark was arrested weeks later and has remained a central figure in the proceedings ever since. Each court appearance added small pieces to the timeline, but the lack of a firm trial date kept the case in a holding pattern until now. This is where the momentum started building.
We continue following breaking news from Texas. TMZ reports popular rapper Takeoff is dead after a shooting outside a bowling alley and pool hall in Houston.
Police confirmed rappers Takeoff and Quavo of the rap group Migos were in attendance at the private party. The shooting occurred around 2:30 this morning on the third level of the establishment. According to TMZ, an altercation broke out during a dice game and someone at the scene opened fire, hitting Takeoff.
Take it. Hold on, look, take it. Listen, take it. Hold on, check this out. Listen. They know y'all, they not gonna be disrespectful like that. But they have to be disrespectful. You can win a basketball.
Ain't about no basketball, bro.
Tell me you don't
Don't play basketball. You just saw me play basketball. Just in the gym. Play like that, bro. Don't play like that, bro. Let go. I ain't gonna sit there. Go back and forth, bro. I've been hurt somebody, bro.
Oh, shit. What are you doing? No, hell no. No.
On the night of the incident, emergency calls came in shortly after 2:30 a.m. from the 810 Billiards and Bowling location in downtown Houston. Officers arrived to find multiple people injured and Takeoff unresponsive. He was pronounced dead at the scene. Detectives secured the area for hours, collecting shell casings and interviewing witnesses while the city woke up to the news. That investigation stretched across weeks, with authorities tracing movements, reviewing video, and eventually identifying Clark as a suspect. But the story didn't stop with the arrest.
Yesterday evening, we arrested Patrick Xavier Brown, 33 years old. He was charged with the murder of Takeoff.
I can tell you that Takeoff was not involved in playing in the dice game. He was not involved in the argument that happened outside. He was not armed. He was an innocent bystander.
When Clark was taken into custody in December 2022, prosecutors described the arrest as the result of coordinated investigative work. They outlined how digital evidence and witness statements contributed to the warrant. From that point forward, the case entered the slow rhythm of the court system. Hearings focused on bond conditions, evidence disclosure, and procedural motions. Each session brought attorneys back into the courtroom, but none carried the weight of a confirmed trial start. Until the February 2026 announcement, that's when the stakes rose again. During recent hearings leading up to the scheduling decision, both legal teams signaled they were preparing for a lengthy trial. Prosecutors indicated they planned to present forensic analysis and testimony from multiple witnesses who were present that night. Defense attorneys pushed for careful review of evidence, filing motions intended to shape what jurors will eventually see and hear. The judge listened to arguments from both sides before finalizing the November timeline, emphasizing the need to move the case forward after years of preparation, and that's when attention shifted back to the calendar.
Mr. Clark, this stands to add.
This is Patrick Clark. He's charged in the death of Migos rapper Takeoff. He was back in court today for what was supposed to be a pre-trial hearing, but that has now been rescheduled for January. After that hearing, we can expect a trial date to be set. Until then, both sides have spent the last several months exchanging evidence and ensuring discovery is complete. Takeoff was shot and killed around 2 in the morning on November 1st, 2022, during a private party at a downtown Houston bowling alley. His attorney tells us there are no plea deals being offered, but they want the murder charge dismissed.
I haven't gotten any word that the case will be dismissed. We'd like the case to be dismissed. We believe it should be dismissed, but we've got no inclination that it would be dismissed. So we're headed to trial if that doesn't happen.
With a month now attached to the trial, the focus turns to what happens between now and opening day. Jury selection is expected to be a major undertaking, given the visibility of the case. Attorneys will question potential jurors extensively to ensure a fair panel. Inside the courthouse, scheduling adjustments are already underway to accommodate what could be weeks of testimony. The courtroom assigned to the trial is preparing for heightened security and media presence once proceedings begin. Something about that preparation signals a new phase. For prosecutors, the months ahead involve refining their presentation and organizing evidence into a clear sequence for jurors. Exhibits collected since 2022 must be cataloged and ready for introduction in court. Witness coordination becomes critical, with schedules aligned to ensure testimony flows without interruption. Defense attorneys are simultaneously building their counterarguments, reviewing every piece of material the state intends to present. Both sides understand that once the trial begins, the pace will accelerate dramatically, and that pressure is already mounting.
I honestly was getting to the point where I kind of felt like we wasn't gonna never get the trial. You know, the last time we heard anything was when the whole forensic lab was under investigation. Like, it's no documents left on the case since October 2025. But now that we finally have that date.
The judge's decision to set November wasn't just about picking a date. It was about signaling that the court expects readiness. Deadlines for final motions are being mapped out in advance. Attorneys will return for additional pre-trial conferences to resolve outstanding issues before jurors ever enter the room. Each of those steps narrows the distance between preparation and presentation. After years of procedural movement, the case is entering its most decisive stretch. And this is where everything begins to accelerate. As February moves forward, the confirmed November schedule stands as the clearest marker yet of where this case is headed. Court officials are aligning resources, attorneys are tightening strategies, and the framework for a full trial is finally visible. What started as a late-night investigation in 2022 is now approaching the stage where evidence and testimony will be examined in open court. The next several months will shape how that presentation unfolds, setting the scene for a trial that has been years in the making.
Takeoff was not playing dice, Quavo was the one playing dice, and Takeoff was in the background observing. Something happened that caused Quavo to get in an altercation with the other men he was playing the game with, which led into a fight, which led into one of their peoples withdrawing their firearm, and when he let off a pop, it hit Takeoff instead of the other people. Takeoff got hit on accident.
When the November trial announcement hit, it didn't just stay inside courtrooms and headlines. Within hours, short-form creators started resurfacing archived news clips from the night in Houston, stitching together timelines that reminded viewers how fast everything unfolded. Several of these videos focused on security camera angles and police arrival times that had been reported back in 2022. The sudden reappearance of those clips brought the case back into everyday conversation, especially for people who hadn't followed every court hearing over the past few years. And that's when the story re-entered the spotlight in a different way.
So unfortunately, I'm here to tell you, I will be covering the trial of the murder of Takeoff, but the realistic understanding is this. Takeoff was murdered during a shootout that wasn't initiated by this guy that we're claiming who fired the initial fatal shot. It wasn't fired by him, and he fired in self-defense. This guy supposedly fired his gun after he was threatened and after there was gunshots already fired. He fired it for his own survival.
On multiple hip-hop podcasts released the same week, hosts open their episodes with the trial update before moving into a breakdown of what happens next. One show recorded just hours after the announcement, with the hosts reading portions of the court summary live on air. They focused on the timeline from the original incident to the present day, emphasizing how long the legal process has taken to reach this point. The conversation stayed centered on the confirmed trial window and what it signals for the months ahead. That's when the pace of coverage noticeably picked up. Local Houston stations began running segments that referenced the renewed online attention. Anchors pointed out that interest in the case had surged again following the scheduling decision. Reporters revisited archived interviews with investigators and attorneys, replaying sound bites that hadn't aired in months. These segments weren't introducing new evidence, but they stitched together past statements in a way that refreshed the public timeline. And that's when older interviews started circulating again.
The event was a private party. There was a lucrative dice game that went on at the event. There was an argument that happened afterwards outside the bowling alley, which led to the shooting. I can tell you that Takeoff was not involved in playing in the dice game. He was not involved in the argument that happened outside. He was not armed. He was an innocent bystander. We've boiled it down to over 30 people that were standing outside. We have an exact number, but we're not going to put that out. When the shooting happened, literally every single one of those people left the scene without giving a statement to police.
One interview from late 2022 began trending again after being clipped into shorter segments. In it, investigators described the methodical process of reviewing footage and interviewing witnesses during the early days of the investigation. Hearing those comments now, years later, adds a sense of continuity between the initial response and the upcoming trial. The clip spread quickly because it connected the original investigation directly to the moment the case is about to enter court. That's when the timeline started feeling immediate again.
Maddie, come inside, Maddie.
Bring over. Come on, we gotta go.
Several independent creators responded by publishing updated timelines that ran from November 2022 to the present. These videos walked viewers through key procedural steps, including arrests, hearings, and scheduling milestones. Instead of focusing on speculation, they leaned heavily on documented events and official filings. The format helped viewers place the November trial date into a larger sequence that has been unfolding for years. And then another layer of coverage appeared. Reporters stationed outside the Harris County Courthouse conducted quick interviews with people passing by after the announcement. Some interviewees said they remembered exactly where they were when they first heard about the shooting. Others focused on how long the case has taken to reach a scheduled trial. These exchanges were brief, but grounded the story in the physical space where proceedings are about to happen. That's when attention shifted back to official statements. Following a routine court appearance connected to scheduling logistics, an attorney involved in the case stopped to answer a few questions in the hallway. The statement was concise and careful, centered on readiness for the upcoming trial. Even in its brevity, the exchange underscored how close the process is getting to a decisive phase. Cameras captured every word, and the clip circulated widely across news platforms. And that moment carried extra weight. A legal news program assembled a panel to talk about the logistical scale of preparing for a case like this. The discussion focused on courtroom coordination, witness scheduling, and evidence organization. Panelists described how months of behind-the-scenes preparation funnel into a concentrated period once jurors are selected. Their comments framed the November start as the culmination of years of incremental progress. And just when it seemed fully procedural, another video went viral. A creator filmed a quiet daytime visit to the Houston location tied to the case, documenting how the area looks today. The video didn't dramatize the setting, it simply showed the space as it currently exists. That understated approach resonated with viewers, and the clip spread quickly. Seeing the location years later added a visual anchor to a story that many people have followed mostly through headlines, and that's when the conversation broadened again. On another podcast recorded days after the announcement, a guest spoke about how the case has resurfaced in cycles whenever a new development appears. The discussion highlighted how each official update tends to trigger renewed reporting and archival footage. The hosts tied that pattern directly to the current moment, noting that the November trial date has restarted that cycle once more. And that's where the momentum continues to build. Recent recap segments now combine courtroom scheduling updates with the wave of resurfaced interviews and viral clips. Anchors are presenting the story as both a legal milestone and a media moment that reconnects past and present. Each broadcast reinforces the sense that the case is entering a new chapter, one that blends official proceedings with the renewed public focus sparked by the November timeline. Long before the November trial was placed on the calendar, one of the earliest courtroom moments came during Patrick Xavier Clark's first appearance before a judge in December 2022. Cameras were lined outside the Harris County Courthouse as deputies escorted him in, and reporters delivered live updates from the steps. Inside, the hearing moved quickly, focused on formal charges and initial conditions. That appearance set the legal process in motion and established the courtroom as the central stage where every major development would unfold. And that's when the case entered a slower rhythm. In the weeks that followed, a bond hearing drew another surge of cameras. Prosecutors and defense attorneys presented arguments about risk and procedure, while the judge weighed conditions. Reporters gathered outside afterward, relaying details in real time. Those broadcasts became some of the most replayed clips tied to the early legal phase, often resurfacing whenever the case returns to headlines. That's when the proceedings started stacking up. Through 2023 and into 2024, the case advanced through a series of tightly scheduled hearings. Each session addressed a specific procedural issue: evidence exchange, scheduling coordination, and formal motions. Court correspondents tracking the case described these appearances as incremental but necessary. None were dramatic on their own, yet together they built the framework that eventually led to a confirmed trial window. And then the spotlight shifted to evidence handling. One investigative segment focused entirely on how evidence from the Houston scene was cataloged and stored. Reporters outlined the chain of custody procedures used by technicians and how materials were transferred for forensic review. The segment included diagrams and interviews with specialists explaining standard protocols. It added a technical layer to public understanding, showing the logistical side of preparing a case for court. That's when another key hearing drew attention. After a significant procedural ruling in 2025, attorneys exited the courthouse to a cluster of microphones. The exchange was brief and measured, but it marked one of the clearest signals that the case was advancing toward a decisive stage. Reporters summarized the judge's decision within minutes, and the clips circulated widely across news feeds. And that's where the narrative tightened. A televised legal roundtable dissected that ruling the same evening. Panelists walked through how it would shape the presentation of evidence once the trial begins. Their discussion focused on courtroom mechanics rather than speculation, mapping out how attorneys might adjust their strategies in response. That's when preparation became more visible. As pre-trial conferences continued, news crews routinely stationed themselves outside the courthouse. Each appearance added another timestamp to the public record. Reporters described the atmosphere as controlled and procedural, with attorneys moving quickly between sessions. These recurring scenes reinforced how consistently the case was progressing behind the scenes. And then the media cycle shifted again. A podcast episode dedicated to legal timelines revisited the major milestones that had defined the case so far. The host organized the discussion around court dates and official filings, tracing how each step connected to the next. Hearing the sequence laid out in one sitting highlighted how methodical the process has been. That's when archival footage resurfaced once more. A recent recap broadcast assembled clips from multiple hearings into a single montage. Viewers saw the progression of appearances condensed into minutes, arrivals, statements, and reporter stand-ups. The montage functioned like a visual timeline, compressing years of proceedings into a clear sequence. And that's where the build-up became unmistakable. Anchors closing those recaps emphasized that the next chapter will be fundamentally different from everything that came before. Instead of brief hearings and procedural arguments, the November proceedings are expected to present sustained testimony and evidence in front of a jury. That preview framed the upcoming trial as the culmination of every step already taken, and that realization shifted the tone of coverage. Standing outside the courthouse, a field reporter recently summarized the path from the initial arrest to the present moment. The segment traced the steady progression of hearings and rulings that paved the way for the scheduled trial. Hearing that recap in one uninterrupted narrative underscored how the case has moved from investigation to adjudication. As November approaches, the conversation is shifting from preparation to execution. The first day of the trial is expected to begin with jury selection, a process that can stretch across multiple days depending on how quickly attorneys agree on a final panel. Potential jurors will be brought into the courtroom in groups, questioned about scheduling conflicts and impartiality, and gradually narrowed down. It's a careful screening process designed to shape the people who will ultimately decide the case. And that's where the atmosphere inside the courtroom will change completely. Once jury selection is finalized, opening statements will mark the first uninterrupted presentation from both sides. Prosecutors will outline the sequence of events they intend to prove, while the defense will respond with their interpretation of the timeline. These statements aren't evidence themselves, but they frame how jurors will listen to everything that follows. It's the moment when months of preparation transform into a live narrative delivered in open court. That's when testimony will begin to take center stage. Witness testimony is expected to proceed in a structured order, starting with foundational accounts that establish time and place. Each witness will answer direct questions from one side and then face cross-examination from the other. The rhythm of questioning can stretch for hours, sometimes days, depending on the complexity of the testimony. Jurors will be instructed to evaluate credibility and consistency as they listen, and that's where pacing becomes critical. Trials of this scale often settle into a daily cadence. Proceedings typically begin in the morning, pause for scheduled breaks, and resume until late afternoon. Outside the courthouse, reporters deliver midday updates, summarizing testimony without cameras entering the courtroom itself. Those updates act as checkpoints, helping the public follow developments in near real time. And that's when the courthouse surroundings come alive. Satellite trucks, camera crews, and correspondents are expected to gather outside Harris County once proceedings start. Designated press zones will manage where interviews and live shots can occur. The area becomes a temporary hub of activity each morning as journalists prepare to relay the day's agenda. That visible presence underscores how closely the trial will be watched, and inside, every detail will matter. Because cameras are restricted inside many courtrooms, sketch artists will likely capture visual moments as testimony unfolds. Their drawings provide the only glimpses of expressions and interactions inside the room. Each sketch freezes a second of the proceedings, later broadcast alongside verbal summaries from reporters. And that's when closing arguments eventually come into view. After all witnesses have testified and evidence has been presented, attorneys will deliver closing arguments. These statements revisit the central themes of the case, tying testimony together into final narratives. Jurors will then receive instructions from the judge before stepping into deliberations. At that point, the decision moves entirely into their hands, and that's where uncertainty reaches its peak. Deliberations can last hours or extend across several days. Jurors review evidence, revisit testimony, and work toward a unanimous conclusion. The courtroom remains on standby while the panel meets privately. When a verdict is reached, everyone is called back in to hear the decision read aloud, and that moment will define what happens next. Once a verdict is announced, the case enters another procedural stage. Depending on the outcome, the court may schedule additional hearings related to sentencing or post-trial motions. Attorneys can request reviews of specific rulings, and judges set timelines for any follow-up proceedings. These steps ensure that the legal process continues in an orderly way after the jury's decision, and that leads directly to the present moment. Right now, the situation stands at a clear threshold. A November trial is officially on the calendar. Attorneys are finalizing preparations, court officials are coordinating logistics, and media organizations are planning extended coverage. The case is transitioning from years of hearings into a concentrated period where testimony and evidence will be examined in front of a jury. Looking ahead, several paths are possible once proceedings begin. The trial could move quickly if testimony flows without delays, or it could extend longer depending on scheduling and legal arguments raised in court. Future hearings tied to the verdict may follow, shaping the final resolution of the case. What's certain is that the next chapter will unfold day by day inside the courtroom. As this situation continues to develop, viewers will be watching closely for each update. If you've been following the case, share your thoughts in the comments about what you expect from the upcoming proceedings. Don't forget to subscribe for continued coverage and future breakdowns as new information emerges. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video.